everyone, welcome to the 2024 Virtual Summit. We have lots to share with you today, and we're so excited that you're here with us. My name is Zoe, I'm a junior from Edgewood, Texas, and I'm currently serving my second year as a Say What Teen Ambassador. Fun fact about me, I can drive a stick shift. Now that you've met me, let's go ahead and meet the rest of the presenters.
Hey everyone, my name is Braden. I'm 15 years old. I'm from Lufkin, Texas, and this is my first year as a teen ambassador. A fun fact about me is that I'm lactose intolerant, but I just drank a milkshake. Anyways, I'm very excited to host my first virtual summit.
Good morning, y'all. I'm Marisol. I'm 16 years old from Houston, Texas, right around near NASA. And are there any Swifties in the house? Because I'm actually a huge Taylor Swift fan. In fact, as of right now, I've been to 2 Eras Tour concerts. Now, this is my first year as a teen ambassador, and just like Braden, this is also my first virtual summit, and I'm really excited to spend it with you all.
Hey everyone, my name is Ryan. I'm 16 years old from Brownsville, Texas, and I am a second-year teen ambassador. And a fun fact about me is that I love New York City. In fact, I've been there 5 times, and I can't wait to go back one day. I am so excited to be here today. Now that we have met all the amazing TAs, let's start the summit by passing it off to Braden.
Thank you, Ryan. Before we officially get started, we would love to give a huge shout out to the Texas School Safety Center at Texas State University, where the Say What program is located. Without them, none of this would be possible. You may be wondering, who is Say What? Well, Say What is a movement made up of youth and adults all over the state of Texas. We are passionate about educating youth on the dangers of all commercialized tobacco. The Say What movement has thousands of members who are dedicated to advocating for healthier schools and communities to be tobacco and vape-free. Say What stands for Students, Adults, and Youth Working Hard Against Tobacco, and was created as our state's youth tobacco prevention movement, and we've all been working together since 2011 to create healthier lives. The teen ambassadors play an important role in the tobacco prevention movement by serving as a voice for the youth. We are a group of teenagers from all over the state who have come together to inform youth and adults about the dangers of tobacco. Not only are we here to inform you, but we're here as a resource to guide you on your advocacy journey.
Now that you know a little bit about Say What, I want to talk to you about our theme for this year, which is Connecting for a Healthier Texas. Throughout the summit, we're going to be giving you all the tools, resources, and information you need to rally your peers, teachers, parents, other adults, and even state officials together to create a healthier Texas. Because let's face it, taking on big tobacco is a big job, and you'll need to connect with those around you to make a difference. Let's take a look at how the TAs connect for a healthier Texas.
I am a role model to my peers because I demonstrate and promote healthy habits.
I am an agent of change for my school because I challenge the tobacco norm.
I'm a mentor in my community because I use my voice to share my knowledge.
I'm a pathfinder in my community because I help connect my peers to create a healthier Texas.
I'm a friend in my community by empowering my peers to overcome their addictions.
I am a pioneer for my community because I work tirelessly to spread awareness.
I am motivational to my peers by encouraging them to live a healthier lifestyle.
I'm an influencer to my peers because I encourage them to make change in our communities.
I'm passionate about creating a healthier Texas because I see the impact tobacco has on my community.
I am an advocate for my community because I act as a voice for those who feel they're not heard.
I'm a spokesperson for my community because I speak out against the harms of vaping.
I'm a trendsetter because I show my peers how to live vape-free.
I'm a defender for my school by protecting them from big tobacco's dirty lies.
I'm an advocate for my community, and we work hard against tobacco.
I'm a leader in tobacco prevention because I want to spark change in my community of El Paso, Texas, and nationwide.
Speaking of connections, we want to make sure you can stay up to date on all things Say What. You can follow us at TX Say What on all social media platforms.
I'm so glad you could all join us for today's virtual summit. Before getting into the presentation, I'd like to give you a quick sneak peek into the content we'll be covering today. Our first portion of the presentation is going to cover the evolution of products, such as the different generations of e-cigarettes to the development of the vapes that you might see today. Afterwards, we'll go into the dangerous chemicals that can be found in these devices. Next, we'll cover the effects caused by these chemicals on the body and the brain. And lastly, we'll go over the effects these products themselves can have on the environment. As you can tell, we have a pretty packed day ahead of us. So let's jump into the presentation, starting off with Ryan, who will be explaining product evolution.
That's right, Marisol. E-cigarettes and vaping products have evolved greatly over time. The first generation were cigalikes. These were first introduced in 2007 and were made to resemble a regular cigarette, even going as far as being disposable to really mimic the feel of a regular cigarette. The second generation were vape pens, which were e-cigarettes with pre-filled or refillable cartridges. These were introduced in 2009 and had a more slim design, kinda resembling the look of a pen, and were not disposable. Next, the third generation, which are called tanks or mods. These were introduced by 2013 and had more customizable options, were bigger and bulkier, and could be refilled and modded the way the user wanted. The fourth generation are called the pod mods. This generation was introduced around 2016, but really took off in 2018. This is where they started becoming more popular with products like Juul, which we see as the spark of the youth vaping epidemic. What made these devices different was that they had a sleek design, disposable flavor pods, and they included nicotine salts, a less harsh version of nicotine, which revolutionized the e-cigarette market. As the youth vaping epidemic continues, we feel that the products have been launched into a new generation. Although the CDC has not recognized the new generation, we believe that this new fifth generation of vapes are even more concerning than the previous four. This new fifth generation has vast amounts of flavors and are much more bright and colorful than the past. Also, within the vapes themselves, the fifth generation has a higher concentration of nicotine found inside than those of its predecessors. Look at it like this. The nicotine found in one vape today can be equivalent to the amount of nicotine found in 40 packs of cigarettes, which is about 800 cigarettes total. Along with the increased nicotine concentration is the amount of puffs found in the fifth generation vapes, meaning the user inhales more nicotine and harmful chemicals in one e-cigarette. They're also more bright, colorful, and concealable than previous generations, which makes them more appealing to teens and kids. Actually, let's test your knowledge really quickly. Take a look at this video and see just how many vapes you think you can spot.
Now that we know what these products may look like, let's discuss why we are so concerned with this fifth generation. Here's what we'll be taking a look at. First, the dangerous ingredients behind the vapes. Second, the impact this new generation can have on our physical health. And lastly, we'll discuss the mental health effects vaping can have on us. But before we dive into all of that, let's take a look at some of the dangerous ingredients found in vapes. First of all, we need to take a crash course on the main ingredient causing so many issues. That chemical is called nicotine. Nicotine is actually a naturally occurring ingredient that is found in the tobacco plant. The problem is how the tobacco industry has manipulated this chemical to become extremely dangerous in all of their products. It's what hooks the user to continue to use products like cigarettes, chewing tobacco, e-cigarettes, and more. Here's what happens when nicotine enters the body. It travels to the brain and releases the hormone dopamine. Dopamine is what makes us feel happy. It's a big part of our ability to think and plan. It helps us strive, focus, and find things interesting. When it's released, the body instantly feels good, which triggers the user to associate happy feelings with using nicotine. This is what can start the vicious cycle of addiction. We also need to take another look at another chemical that is commonly found in vapes, and that is THC, scientifically known as tetrahydrocannabinol, which is derived from the cannabis plant, but you may know it as marijuana. Just like nicotine, THC is extracted to be used in various products, including vapes. THC is equally dangerous and has both short and long-term effects on the brain. In fact, high doses of THC can cause hallucinations, psychosis, and delusions. We'll actually be talking about addiction in much more detail later on with a licensed therapist. So for now, let's talk about all the other harmful chemicals found in vapes. The first chemical we'll take a look at is propylene glycol. Propylene glycol is a clear, odorless chemical that is used to flavor most e-cigarettes. Propylene glycol is found in common products you see every day, like antifreeze for your car and paints used for painting walls. The second chemical is diethylene glycol. This chemical is also clear and odorless, but it's sweet tasting, so it's used as a base in the flavoring of most e-cigarettes. It's also found in your car's brake fluid. Both propylene glycol and diethylene glycol are similar in many ways, including the fact that when they're both heated up and inhaled, it can cause injury to the lungs to the point of scarring the tissue in the lungs. The third chemical is something we might all be familiar with, and that is vegetable glycerin. Vegetable glycerin can be found in everyday items, such as toothpaste and canned fruits, which sounds suspicious because we can eat this chemical and nothing happens to us. The reason for this is because our digestive system can handle this chemical, whereas when vegetable glycerin gets heated up into a vapor and inhaled, it causes damage to the lungs, to the point of making it hard to breathe. Finally, we need to talk about two chemicals in particular that are actually metals: nickel and lead. Nickel is found in everyday things like batteries, appliances, utensils, and jewelry, but nickel is actually toxic to the body. When it's inhaled, it can cause respiratory diseases, lung cancer, asthma, bronchitis, and so many other terrible things. The other metal, lead, is even more dangerous. In fact, it's so dangerous that it can affect almost every organ and system in the body. Lead toxicity can cause paralysis, affect the digestive and reproductive system, cause irreversible brain damage, and affect our blood's capability to carry oxygen. This metal has been banned from being used in so many items because it's so dangerous to the human body. Yet somehow, it's found in vapes.
So now that you know all about what's in a vape, you might be thinking, what do all those crazy chemicals do to your body? Well, vaping affects all areas of your body, including the heart, the brain, the liver, the immune system, and of course, the lungs. Vaping can cause coughing, shortness of breath, and chest pain, but all of these are just surface-level symptoms. Prolonged usage can lead to more serious problems like bronchiolitis obliterans, or more commonly known as popcorn lung. It might sound like something fun, but popcorn lung is actually really scary. It causes scarring on a person's airways that leads to dry coughing, fatigue, wheezing, and difficulty breathing. This disease got its name because it was first discovered in workers at a microwave popcorn plant who had inhaled the flavored chemical diacetyl, and it was then discovered that breathing in the harmful substances such as diacetyl was the main cause of developing the disease. You may have heard before that the cloud produced by vapes is just harmless water vapor. That, however, is simply not true. It's actually something called aerosol. You can think of it like a can of hairspray. What comes out of the can is aerosol. Aerosol from a vape contains nicotine, ultrafine particles, and toxins that are known to cause cancer. In reality, there actually isn't any water found in vapes. It's all chemicals. I'm sure most of you know what asthma is, and many of you probably know people who have it or even have it yourself. Speaking from personal experience, I can attest that asthma can be incredibly scary because it can feel as if you can't take another breath. Youth who vape are twice as likely to develop it than those who don't. Not only does vaping affect your lungs and other organs, but it impacts your appearance as well. Users have been known to experience cold sores, nosebleeds, cavities, and acne. As you can see, vaping can cause a lot of damage, and it doesn't really matter if someone is vaping nicotine or THC. The health effects are pretty much the same. They both cause problems with the lungs, brain, heart, and so many other organs, and neither one is safer than the other.
Hey everyone, it's Charlene, and I'm a first-year Say What college consultant. So I actually have a surprise for y'all. We're gonna switch it up a little bit because we've been podcasting. So earlier, we were joined by Leanne. So Leanne is a licensed clinical social worker and an adolescent therapist. And trust, she had so much amazing insight as an expert on how big tobacco has impacted us as youth and our mental health. She had such an amazing way of communicating with us and just a great understanding. But I'm not going to overhype too much. You're just going to have to trust and stay tuned. So I hope you all enjoy it just as much as we did. All right. Hi, Leanne. First of all, I just want to thank you so much for being here with us today. Where are you coming from?
Coming from Dallas.
Right.
Yes.
So she basically just walked into the studio. We did have the pleasure of kind of getting to know each other, but I did want to give you the opportunity just to kind of preface. I know you kind of do like some social work. So to just give you the opportunity to kind of talk about your involvement with youth and how substance abuse kind of ties into that, you know, just kind of what that looks like in your career.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm just a mental health therapist. Social work is one of the directions you can take to get licensed to be a mental health therapist. It's kind of cool. You can do all sorts of things. You could do psychology, you could do counseling, you could do a med school, but I took the social work route, and I see youth clinically in therapy, talk about mental health. Because I'm an LCSW is what it's called, that means I assess, diagnose, and treat youth for mental health issues. Right now, that just looks like individual therapy at a practice in Dallas. But in the past, I've done high schools or juvenile detention centers or hospitals, which is where the social work part comes in. I can also have social work jobs that are like more working with communities and resources and like in a prison, which is what I really, really love about my job is being a mental health therapist, but being a social worker as well. And a lot of the youth that I see sometimes are court ordered to see me because of drug use or because of being caught vaping at school. And a lot of youth I see are there for mental health issues, but they also have issues with vaping or drug use. And so we talk about that as well. So it comes up all the time in individual therapy. It came up a lot when I worked at a detention center in high schools and stuff like that. But yeah, so I see it all the time because I'm helping youth deal with mental health issues. And usually, or sometimes, those are connected and drug use is talked about as well.
Can you kind of expand more on that? Because you mentioned how the mental health and drug use kind of connect sometimes.
Yeah.
So what are those like kind of correlations? What do those patterns look like, and how have you seen it in youth today?
Yeah, it could kind of be like the chicken or the egg. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Sometimes it's mental health issues and then drug use. Sometimes it's drug use and then mental health issues. So it's a little bit of back and forth. But no matter what, those things work together like in a cycle together. If you start using drugs and you didn't have mental health issues, you're probably going to start to have some depression or anxiety. So it kind of goes back and forth. If you have a hard time dealing with life's ups and downs, you might be more likely to turn to vaping or using marijuana. And so that's where those two are connected. Another big thing, too, is one of the like withdrawal symptoms are mental health symptoms. It's I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling low motivation. So that's why those are so intertwined, and they show up at the same time. Yeah.
Have you, like, when you talk to people who use nicotine versus THC, do the people who use THC, they have the same, like, does it have the same mental effects as the nicotine does? Because I see a lot of people who think it doesn't. Like, they just think it's fine and it doesn't affect them the same way. But, like, is there similar effects?
That's a great question. I get that a lot too. It's like, well, but now I use THC because it's not as bad, or you know, all these people say it's becoming more and more legal. Yeah, there's like all this confusion around that. You're right. There are some like physical differences between the way that nicotine and vaping affects a teen versus how using marijuana or THC will affect a teen. But when it comes to where a teen's brain is at and their development, and when it comes to their mental health, it looks practically the same. So maybe that word addiction is where people draw a black and white line. You can get really addicted to vaping, but you can't get addicted to THC or marijuana. In my field of mental health, the way we talk about substance use, we talk about substance use disorders as like a mental health experience. And the definition of a substance use disorder is practically the same as addiction. And that is what we use to explain when somebody has a dependency on THC or marijuana. And kind of like I told you before, you have that like cycle of I maybe don't feel good, so I use a drug, and then I don't feel good. Like what comes first? They just interact with each other. That's what happens with THC and marijuana, where it starts to become a dependency, or it looks exactly like an addiction. It's like, well, this is what I do to get through the day, or this is what I do to deal with stress. And so then it does become this dependency. I cannot do the next thing. I cannot, get through the day. The definition of addiction is doing something, a substance that gives you like an immediate reward, even though it's harming you and there's negative consequences. Like you're doing it even though it's having bad effects. And that is the same thing that happens with THC marijuana. It's like you still use it even though it's having all these negative effects on you. So yes and no, I think that they really marry each other and look really similar. So.
And you mentioned like in your job description, like assessing like addiction is like part of it. So what does that process look like, and how do those conversations typically go when you're dealing with youth?
There's a lot of particular things to look for when it comes to, am I dependent on a substance or am I addicted? A lot of them have to do with like, have I ever said, I'm only going to do this much and I did more? Or I said, I'm only going to do it this many days and I did it for more days. Or I'm only going to do it for a couple minutes and then I did it for 2 hours. That's one thing we're looking for. Another thing we're looking for is, are there negative consequences that happen, but you still decide to use anyways? Whether that's my grades are going down, I'm missing school, my relationships in my family are going bad, maybe relationships with friends are going bad. If there are negative consequences and you're still making that decision, that's another thing that we're looking for. There's also a lot of things to look for, like periods of time and how long and those kind of things, but those are probably the two big ones. Have you ever tried to quit and then you couldn't? And I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, everybody tries to quit and they can't. But that's one of the indicators of dependency or addiction. So those are some of the things that we screen for when I look for that. I'm also looking for, I'm asking those questions like, do you ever feel a negative feeling and then decide to vape or use? And that's a big one for me too. Like I said, teen brain's really cool. Being a teen is cool because a lot of things are still so new. Things are really exciting. Things are more exciting when you're experiencing them for the first time than when you're experiencing them, for a million times. It's kind of the same as like a 1-year-old. I'm not sure if you've been around a 1-year-old much, but they get stoked on peekaboo. You know what I mean? Like, peekaboo, really? Peekaboo? Like, that's lame, right? But 1-year-olds think it's the coolest thing they've ever seen. They see a tag on the chair. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. But I would not give a 1-year-old like a 12-ounce can of orange soda. I just know, like, dude, that 1-year-old needs milk. He needs whole milk and some water. Because I know that 1-year-old's growing.
Yeah.
That just seems really obvious to us. It's the same for teens, right? Teens are in this awesome learning period. They're experiencing all these things. I'm not giving that teen nicotine, and I'm not giving them THC because it affects the way you're going to learn in that period. It really affects the way you deal with life's ups and downs, i.e. your mental health. If you start using, if you're vaping or if you're using marijuana underneath the age of 17, you are more likely to have mental health problems as an adult. Or you're more likely to have dependency problems as an adult. I mean, that's where all the research comes in, right? All these facts of like, if a teen uses, the repercussions are huge compared to other populations. So that's kind of where we start, is like, hey, I know you see Uncle so-and-so doing it, and I know you see, neighbors over 18 doing it, but let me help you know what that means for you as a teen.
Once you go through the process and you determine like somebody has an addiction or problem, what does the next step look like? How do you start making, like, they decide they want to quit? How do you do, like, what do you do first?
Yeah. So my role, I'm a mental health therapist, right? So there's all these things that they should be doing probably with parents and teachers and all these like physical health stuff that they can do in order to quit. My job and my role is to focus on mental and emotional. This is actually good for people to know because if you want to help a friend, you can do these same things that I do in therapy with my clients. And it's figuring out, okay, what thoughts, feelings, and relationships lead to you using. Is it a stress feeling? Is it anytime I feel rejected or uninvited? Or is it anytime I feel worried about something? We identify, we log, journal. Okay, for the next 2 weeks, every time you think of it or you want to do it or you do it, write down who, what, where, when, why, what color shirt were you wearing? Were you eating pineapple? I want to find any kind of pattern that's going on in your mental health. Because then when we decide, okay, we're quitting, and a moment comes up like, oh man, I'm really stressed. Oh, I knew that the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to want to vape. Me and Leanne already prepped, I'm going to go walk a lap, or I'm going to call up my friend and chat about gaming. I don't know, that they can kind of prepare. So that's kind of what I do, is I focus on the mental health of it so that they don't get stuck in that cycle. Because what's going to happen is when they decide to stop vaping, they're going to have a withdrawal symptom, which is depression and anxiety. And they're going to be like, dang, what do I do with this depression and anxiety? Well, what did I do before? Oh, I used. And so I don't have anything to replace that. So I guess I'll just use again. So I prepare them for that moment. What can you do instead when you get that low mental moment? Because that's so intertwined with their using.
So you mentioned working through these, addiction plans or just the journaling. You mentioned taking a lap around. What are some more examples that you have seen become successful in some of the youth that you might have dealt with to kind of mitigate that?
So after you make that plan, deciding what you're going to do. An action plan, replacers. A lot of people talk about replacers, talk about gum or, having something to put in your mouth. So those are the physical things. The next thing I see really helpful is okay, if I've tracked when I feel down, when I feel bad, or when I'm lonely or whatever, having a plan to what we call cope ahead. Okay, I don't even have to decide in the moment what I'm going to do. I already decided ahead of time. I want to vape at night, or I want to use THC at night. So now every night I have the best dang night routine. I got all the lotions. I watch my favorite show. I call my favorite friend. So that coping ahead skill to help deal with those moments where you're tempted to relapse or do something again. That's probably the next thing. And then after that, getting a really big team. Okay, who are your friends? Okay, which parent do you trust the most to talk about? Who's a teacher? And just making that support group really, really big, because just me and them alone is not enough, especially since I see them 1 hour a week, or every other week. So getting that support team really, really big, which is tied to what I said earlier about what's the biggest influence on being able to quit and quit forever. It's how big your support team is. So that would probably be the next thing that we work on. So
But something else, just kind of like moving down the line. So let's say that, you have a client and we assess the addiction and we're working through it. And we've hit a point where we think that we've kind of got over the hump.
Okay.
So I just kind of want to hear like what your experience with like reoccurrence is like and how like I guess youth deal with that and just kind of like how they explain what that's like to you because that relapse kind of thing, I feel like what does the timeline of that look like? Like how long do you think or have you typically seen that kind of
So if they started in middle school or junior high, that maybe the relapse is going to happen more often and it's going to be harder. Whereas some of the clients I've seen that started in high school realize, oh, wow, this is a problem. I want to fix it. It was easier to be able to quit for good. I think is what you're talking about, right? Like relapsing versus quitting for good versus, I would say everybody's so different. But I think the biggest pattern is how early you started. And how early you started has all sorts of negative effects on teenager brain, adult life, and all that kind of stuff. But that's what I would say is maybe the main pattern. And then the level of support. So if I've got a teen who's like, ooh, I want to stop this, but he's got no friends who are on his team, no family maybe that's there to kind of walk him through it, or unsupportive school staff that don't believe in them, then they're going to have more relapses and maybe more problems. But the teens that tell me like, oh yeah, another teen actually, me and my girlfriend were quitting together.
Wow.
So quick. And from what I know, haven't started back up again. So, so I think the difference is how early you started and how good your support team is, too. That's big, which is why I think us talking about all this and, like, how can we be a good support is so important, too, that really, really helps.
My biggest struggle, like, dealing with that, like, helping friends, I think, and I kind of want to talk to you about, is that sense of denial. So I definitely understand, like, what you're saying. Like, once we have both already established that we're dealing with addiction, like what are those next steps? Like what can we do? But I feel like a lot of the time there's just this denial that it's addiction or, like substance, abuse or reliance and stuff like that. So how do you go about that? Like how do you approach those conversations to just acknowledge the fact that there is something to be dealt with in the first place?
Yeah, that part's really tough because you dig your friend. I'm assuming if they're your friend, or you dig this person and you just like want what's best for them. But denial is a heavy, big thing, and it can blind all sorts of stuff. My number one advice, especially when it comes to teens, this is different advice than what I'd give to parents or teachers or principals, is teens are like you're so much more helpful than adults are when it comes to this moment. And so what your friend needs is a peer and not another parent, teacher, police officer, etc., which can be hard because in your mind you're like, bruh, I want to throw away your vape and I want to lock you up and we're going to play Uno, so you can just not do that. But what they need from you is just friends. So communicate to them. I think the best you can do in regards to calling them out and helping them with that denial is to communicate how it affects your friendship. You're like, hey, just so you know, sometimes I feel like totally ditched by you because you were flaky because of blank, because of using or blah, blah, blah. Or like, just so you know, I'm worried about you. Like in college, I want to have a grand old time and I'm worried that you're going to be, stuck vaping and like thinking about the next hit and we can't have a great time. Like I want you to be there for me and I want to be there for you. Here's how this is affecting me, and try to be there as a friend or a peer rather than as a parent, adult, or police officer. And then maybe if you feel like it's appropriate, send them to the appropriate parent, police officer, teacher, therapist. That's what the therapy room is for, is dealing with that denial, is helping them to overcome that. Like therapists are trained to help somebody to see that. So that's what I would say is the next best thing you could do is help them to go to somebody who can help them with the denial. You just help them with the friend part, the here's how it affects me part. So send them my way.
No, yeah, I hear you for sure. And I think that's really important to keep in mind just going forward, because I know that's such a touchy topic because, I mean, we're fortunate. Like we were able to be like educated and we just had that awareness brought to our attention before, before we were, susceptible or we're in the right place at the right time and, peer pressured or anything like that. So,
yeah. You can still tell them, hey, here are the facts.
True.
Look at this Say What content and what it says about all this stuff. You can still kind of give it to them that way. But yeah, in regards to denial, your role might only go so far.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts about having it come from a friend specifically, because they would kind of know what kind of communication you're receptive to. So one of my friends may need the facts to be like, oh, wait. Or some of them, may need a different approach. So
yes,
that's just another reason, as a friend, why you would want to be the one, to kind of just share that concern at least,
Yeah.
And so I know you talked about earlier about people who are working on quitting and the things that you give, they figure out what they're going to do to help them stop. But what are some ways that people who haven't started yet, what are some good ways to start thinking about doing things to help prevent you from getting there? What can people who aren't there yet but worry that they could eventually?
Or does that look similar?
Yeah, does it look similar? Is it the same process or?
The question you're asking is, how do you prepare and make sure that your mental health is good so you don't get to a point where you're using, or is that what you're asking?
I think so. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm getting at. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
The first is educate. Educate yourself, get as much information as possible. The next thing I would say when it comes to being good and in a place where you're not going to make the decision to use, whether that's vaping or THC or marijuana, is make sure you've got good, I guess the general way to say this is make sure your mental health is good, okay? And what mental health is it's your ability to handle life's ups and downs. If you notice yourself when life's ups and downs happens and you're getting stuck, you're I can't do this, whoa, red flag. So to make sure your mental health is good, you got, okay, where are my feelings, where are my thoughts, and where are my relationships? If you're keeping your feelings in check, if you've got good way to regulate your feelings, you've got good way to deal with down days, if you've got positive thoughts, if you've got positive relationships, you're way less likely to decide to vape, use marijuana, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because I'm high on life. As cheesy as that sounds, right? Life is going good. I know how to deal with an up and down. I'm not going to decide to use this thing to deal with an up or down, if that makes sense. That would be the first thing I would say. Get your mental health in check.
Just to digest a little bit more into that, because sometimes I think that line between good and bad mental health can be fuzzy, right? Because natural human response is to have feelings and to react a certain type of way. So could you almost give me an example of what would a healthy response and a not healthy response would be? Because sometimes I can...
Yes, I'm glad that you asked that. So for example, let's say you have a really bad day for whatever reason. If your mental health is good, it's kind of dang, that was a bad day. I got this. I'm going to figure this out. I'm still cool. I'm still I can make this work. Bad mental health is bad day, and it's I have to give up. I cannot do this. I mean, as cheesy as it sounds, it's the I can versus I can't. If the way that you're responding to a bad day is I can't, it's over, we're done, I'm screwed, or I can't handle it, that's an inability to deal with life's ups and downs. You can still say today sucked, and I am sad, and I'm gonna be sad, and I'm gonna listen to sad music for the rest of the night, but tomorrow I'm really excited to do A, B, and C. That's what I mean by your mental health is good. You can take a down comes, and you still got good thoughts, and you can still rely on good relationships, and you still know how to maybe turn it around. Yeah, it's not everything's always happy and I'm always happy.
Yeah.
It's maybe more of a mindset of I believe I'm going to be good and I know I can handle it.
That's so interesting, genuinely, because I feel sometimes it's more portrayed more black and white than that. So it's that's the first time I ever really understood what good mental health looks like.
Yeah.
Because to me it was just, oh, bad mental health, okay, you're depressed, you're dealing to an extreme almost. But with you just saying that, like, even me right now, I feel like, well, maybe I need to work on that too. Like, truly, because, I mean, as a college student, especially in April, if you know, you know.
You're drowning.
Drowning. But just your natural response is your natural response to go, this is like, you know, down, or is your natural response to be like, but on the right side, you know, like, at the end of the day, I'm going to be okay. Like, just that contentness. So I'll just go ahead and just thank you so much for this productive conversation.
It was fun.
You know, we've hit all the bases. We've learned a lot about ourselves and just about mental health and drug abuse and drug reliance in general. So thank you so much for coming with us today and joining us. And I'm really excited to continue the work and just continue working towards a healthier Texas.
Good luck. I'll see you out there. You know?
See you out there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Isn't today such a nice day?
Oh, yeah. It's a really nice day.
Wouldn't it be a shame if all of these days just like went away?
Wait, what are you talking about?
Think of all the turtles.
The turtles? What turtles? Dude, what are you talking about?
The turtles. They're choking on plastic straws. I'm actually organizing a petition to ban plastic straws, if you'd like to sign.
Okay, I'd love to sign. But, you know, it's not just straws that are being littered.
What do you mean?
It's tobacco litter, too. In fact, tobacco litter, it's the #1 most littered item in the world. Think about it. How many cigarette butts do you think are littered every year in the United States?
I don't know.
Well, you think on it. How about you guys? How many cigarette butts do you think are littered each year in the U.S.?
Probably millions or hundreds of thousands.
100 billion.
Like, I would think like 10,000, like a lot, because there's like so much on the streets. Probably 10,000.
This is definitely a low ball, but like 10 million.
At least 1 million, right? Something like that?
2,000.
10?
A lot.
4,000.
5,000. About 30,000.
Probably over 200,000.
10,000.
I'd say a couple million.
80,000 million.
1,600?
10,000?
I would say like 20,000 probably. 1,000?
1.5 billion?
I'm gonna guess 1 billion.
It's gotta be billions. It's gotta be billions.
Those were some great answers, you guys, but there was a lot of variety. After hearing those responses, what do you think?
Well, now I'm even more confused.
I can imagine. So the actual answer, it's 4.5 trillion. 4.5 trillion cigarette butts littered every single year.
Trillion with a T?
Mm-hmm.
That's so many. And I bet the turtles eat those too.
Yeah, and it gets worse because it's not just cigarette butts included in tobacco litter. It's also chewing tobacco, cigars, even e-cigarettes. I have another question for you. How many e-cigarettes do you think are littered daily in the United States?
Daily? I mean, it can't be that many. But the last number was also really high.
Okay, well, how about we ask our friends in the audience again? How many e-cigarettes do you think are littered every day in the U.S.?
I would like to say hundreds of thousands too.
Probably like 100, 200.
100? No, like 100 maybe?
10,000.
10,000?
500.
100?
More than 1,000.
1,000.
I say about 4,000. About 30,000.
40,000?
5,000?
What's an e-cigarette?
20?
Like 1,000 maybe?
530?
10 million.
A couple 100,000.
Couple 100,000, probably.
Say close up to 500,000, maybe.
That was a really tough question since it's got a really specific answer. But it's actually 432,000 e-cigarettes littered every day. That comes out to about 5 e-cigarettes littered per second.
Ugh, that just makes me sick.
I know, but think about how much we could benefit the environment if we were able to combat tobacco litter.
I bet the turtles would be healthier without all that litter.
But you're not gonna like this part. Tobacco litter, it leaks a lot of chemicals into our environment. What do you think some of those could be?
I can only imagine, like metals and plastics?
Maybe. Let's hear from you guys. What kind of harmful chemicals or toxins do you think are being leaked into our environment because of tobacco litter?
Probably something like in the flavoring.
Nicotine, maybe? Like nicotine and stuff.
Nicotine?
Just unnatural poisons and chemicals that could harm, plants and fauna and stuff like that.
Like smoke?
Bad ones.
Smoke.
Nicotine?
The nicotine.
I don't know. Probably not good ones though.
Like lead. I've heard nickel and like chemicals that just shouldn't be in your lungs, really.
Like lead and toxins and stuff.
Nicotine.
I know there's nicotine.
Probably like toxic waste or something like alcohol.
Nicotine, marijuana, that kind of stuff.
There's probably a lot. Nicotine, just a bunch of different chemicals.
I don't know, obviously there's plastic because of the e-cigarettes themselves maybe, but there's just so many chemicals, I don't even know what's in it, so probably nothing good, honestly.
Truth is, there are so many chemicals being leaked. Some we don't even know about. All that toxic waste is leaking so many harmful chemicals that can damage our environment, which can lead to harming humans, animals, plants, and our oceans, where the turtles live.
That's actually so sad, but surely there's something being done about this, like the tobacco companies. Are they doing anything?
It's pretty unfortunate, but even with all the pollution that they cause, big tobacco companies aren't really doing anything for the environment. Sometimes they'll even pretend to do something and try to convince us that they're the good guys. This is known as greenwashing. Have you heard of it?
Actually, yeah. Sprite did that by replacing their green bottles that were easier to spot in landfills with the clear bottles. They said it used less plastic and was easier to recycle, but in reality, it was just to hide all of their pollution.
That's a perfect example of greenwashing. And this is a tactic that big tobacco companies engage in all the time, but sometimes it looks a little different. Do you know what Zyn is?
They're the nicotine pouch company, right?
Yeah. So Zyn, they have this campaign. It's called Zyn Cares, where they explain that when someone buys their products, Zyn donates to a charity that benefits the environment by maybe supplying cleaner water or planting trees, or benefits society, maybe by helping building houses for those in need. But in reality, Zyn is just trying to recruit more people to use their product, get addicted, and become lifetime consumers. They're really taking advantage of potential and current customers.
Well, what can I do to help? I need to save those turtles.
Don't worry, we're gonna save the turtles soon enough. There are actually 2 main ways to combat tobacco litter. One, by raising awareness, by maybe educating others, speaking out on social media, or just having discussion with your peers. There's also tobacco litter cleanups. I'm about to head over to a tobacco litter cleanup right now. You should come along.
Yeah, I'd love to. We have covered a lot of material today, so let's quickly recap. First, we spoke about the evolution of e-cigarettes and the concern about this new 5th generation.
Second, we covered the dangerous chemicals found inside, like propylene glycol and lead.
Third, we talked about the physical effects of vaping. Then we had really good conversations about the mental health myths we hear, and talked to Leanne, who conveyed what she knows as a therapist.
And finally, we saw how tobacco environmental issues have been overlooked and how tobacco companies try to be the good guys. Also, what we can do to combat tobacco litter.
To close out this summit, we want to encourage you to do more with this information. Encouraging a person to quit is not the only thing you can do. Go out and tell your classmates, community members, and family all the things you've learned here today.
Also, follow us on social media to keep up to date with all the news we hear from across the state. Finally, become a Say What member to fully connect and network with your peers across the state. As a member, you will have access to connect with groups across the state and have access to exclusive Say What swag and materials. With all of that being said, thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you this summer for our Say What conference in Austin. But until then,
bye!